All right, good morning, friends. It's Wednesday, and life's going to be good today. We had a great week so far, right? I hope you did. Last night we went to Aniana, watched some flag football. It's always fun. Made our way to Sonic with the Grands, and had a good time hanging out with them. I love those kids, man. Love life. So hope you're doing well, and I hope things are going good for you today. We have back in the book of First Peter, and man, it's so rich. My mind this morning was just exploding as I was just contemplating our salvation, really. And if there's anything that this book is doing, it may not be as practical from a uh, standpoint of like James and how he wrote, but it is so powerful for us to understand the call to live a holy life. And so that's where we are. That's what we're looking at. Peter, again, is writing to a group of people under tremendous persecution and is wearing them out. He's, as a pastor, as an apostle, his heart's going out to them. He's giving them hope. This book really is a book about hope. It's a call to live not for this life, but for the one to come, and how to live in this life and enjoy it with our view toward what's to come. That's kind of the whole point of what he's writing. And today we look at this whole concept of redemption and what that looks like. And so some of these topics, if you've been walking with the Lord for a while, are going to seem not as exciting because we've grown too accustomed to it. And so today, I want to kind of awaken us to the reality of our redemption, and I think sometimes we think too highly of ourselves. I think that's the bottom line. And I could just say, I think too highly of myself. I'm realizing that. And so this is important that we look at. So we're in First Peter chapter 1, slowly working our way through it. We're going to look at 17 through 21 today. I'm going to read that for you in a second. I just want to kind of give us a review. Peter's call, what he's calling us to do is to take our spiritual life, our life, seriously. That we would understand and be sober about what it means to be a Christ follower. It is so easy to get caught up in this world and in the mundaneness of it, and to be gushed over with an overwhelming amount of worldly news, of escapes into worldly, videos and shows and all of that. We're just inundated with forgetting God, living in the moment, and it was in that time too. Not so much that they could forget God; they were like, "Well, where is God?" Right? I mean, this trouble's coming, so where is he? But he's saying, hey, I want you to take your spiritual life, which is your life, seriously. So don't conform to the world. Don't take your cues from the world. There's a lot of conformity today. People are conforming in every different way. None of it's good. And so he's saying, stop conforming that. That's an old way of living. It's a selfish way of living. He said, I want you to be holy because God is holy and he is everything in our world. And so we should have a hope in the future, right? A living hope. We looked yesterday and said that faith is trusting God in the day. Hope is trusting God for our future. And so that's what hope is. And he's called us to that since all of this salvation was given freely, and the Lord is watching. That's what he says in verse 17. Since you call on the Father who judges each person's work impartially, live out your time as foreigners here in reverent fear. Now, we're going to look at that in just a second. But the Lord is watching, and he's disciplining us. And I don't mean, sometimes we use the term discipline, we think, okay, well, God's punishing me. Not that God's punishing us. He's disciplining us. He's just like we do our kids. He's helping us rein in our self-discipline, so to speak, to be self-controlled, not to just be running rampant after what our wicked heart in past days would choose to go after. And so he says, so in fear, live as a foreigner. Now, let me read it, and then we're going to jump into it. Since you call on the Father who judges each person's work impartially, live out your time as foreigners here in reverent fear. So he's saying, hey, listen, you're just a foreigner here, so live out the time that you have. I love how he's saying that, like we're on vacation or something, or we're on some work release program, or we're working off site. He says, live as foreigners here in reverent fear, holy fear, that there's a God who is holding us accountable to live worthy lives. And then he says, for you know that it was not with perishable things such as silver or gold that you were redeemed from the empty way of life handed down to you from your ancestors. You hear what he's saying there? He's saying, hey, listen, money didn't buy you. There was a silly way of life. It was empty, though your ancestors kept giving it to you. Then he says, but with precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect, he was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake. There's a mountain of theology in that. God the Creator, before he even created Adam and Eve, and he knew that they would choose sin. He knew, given choice, that's what would happen. He said, in spite of all of that, knowing that that was going to happen, and our hearts would turn wicked and dark, our minds would be darkened, we would live under this curse. Before all of that ever happened, God knew it in his mind what would take place, and chose Christ and this method. This wasn't an afterthought. Oh man, the people have messed up. How do I fix it? He already understood what was going to happen in our human nature and had already prepared a way out for us. Think about that for a minute. Now, then he says, through whom you believe in God, who raised him from the dead and glorified him, and so your faith and hope are in God. God's my only hope, my only way out of this. Now, we're talking about redemption, and I want to make sure we're clear on that. The word redeemed, and it may not make much sense to us these days because we're far removed from a lot of that. But to be redeemed meant to be bought back, to be purchased back. In the days in which Peter's writing, if a country was conquered and their people were enslaved, a country could buy those people back. They could be redeemed. Right? You could buy them back. You could buy a loved one back from indentured servanthood by paying a amount of money. You could get your family member free. There was an exchange, and this is what he's saying, that you and I have been redeemed from what? Well, slavery. What to what? I was a slave to sin, to everything about it. And I know you're thinking, I wasn't. I mean, I was, but I'm saying we tend to say to ourselves, yeah, but I mean, I wasn't so bad. I mean, I'm not that bad. That's our problem. We don't understand the depth of our depravity. And this is what he wants us to understand, that we were living an empty way of life. Empty way of life handed down. We were simply going through motions. We were just slaves to sin, and that brought great issues. So now we weren't bought with money, though. That was how you would do the other. This was a deeper deal. This was going to require not just money. It was going to require a blood sacrifice, and that's where Christ comes in. And the fact that he was raised from the dead and glorified, which is what he says here, lets me know that I too have that hope that I will be resurrected from the dead and will be glorified. And so this is what he's saying. My faith is in God to do the same thing for me that he did for Christ on the cross. Now, let's talk about this redemption. That's the text. And we've kind of loosely broken this down for you, right? It says, since you were called the Father who judge, live in reverent fear here, for you know that it wasn't perishable things that bought my redemption. It was the precious blood of the Lamb that bought my redemption. And he was chosen to do that before you ever breathed a breath of life. God had already provided the way for you. But we just now in the last days, that is, as Christ came, seen that come about. Through him, I believe in God, who raised him from the dead and glorified him. And so my faith and hope are in God that he will do the same for me. That's our text. Now, let's go back and look at this thing called redemption. I was, and you were, and hear this well, a slave to sin. We were born that way. We were born under a curse. When you and I were born, we were born defective from what God's original plan and design was, that we should be perfect and holy and blameless, that we should walk in relationship with him. Sin that entered into the human race because of Adam and Eve's choice to sin brought with it death and a curse. And so that death then was transferred to us, so that when we were born, our heart wasn't born pure. We were all born dirty, rotten, stinking little sinners. My heart was wicked from the core. My mind was already darkened, not the original intent that I would be enlightened, that I would have the mind of Christ, and all of those things that God is now giving us in Christ, we didn't have. And so I was purely selfish. That's who and if you look at the world today, the unbelievers, it's a pure selfishness. Now, they may mask it in certain things, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but I was a slave to sin, pure selfishness. I was consumed with me and everything about me, obsessed with that, so that I would either manipulate you in one way to do what I want. I would, whatever I needed to do, I would put myself in the greatest light possible. I tried to hide it, right? My sin, you try to hide it. No, I didn't do that. Just like Adam and Eve. No, not me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. And then I'll spin it, right? If I can't hide it, I'm going to spin it. And I'm going to say, well, it was you. Well, you're the reason. Well, I had no choice. This is the thoughts of a wicked heart and a darkened mind. Or I would try to outgood it. If I did believe that, well, maybe there is a God. Because you see, there's no such thing as an atheist. The fool has said in his heart there is no God. There may be some foolish people, but we all know because of creation that there's a God, right? I mean, you can't deny it. You can try to spin that and call that evolution and all that, garbage if you want to, but design demands a designer. There was a creator. And my conscience also lets me know that there's something, there is a standard, and I'm not meeting it. My conscience says that. The scriptures bear that out, but it's true. So then when I realize that, and I realize, well, okay, there may be a God, I'm going to try to outgood him. I'll make my good outweigh my bad. That's as silly as can be. If that doesn't work, I'll bribe him. Well, Lord, if you'll do this, I'll do that. Right? How silly is that? We're going to have this conversation with the creator of the universe. So I'm a slave to sin. I can't do anything but that. You're saying, well, I didn't. I mean, I wasn't a slave to sin. Au contraire. Yes, you are. You and me live and breathe wickedness. There's none righteous, no, not one. Everyone is evil and resists God. It is true. My heart was wicked. Like the writer of the prophet says, our heart is desperately wicked. Now, I may not have exhausted the depth of that depravity, my wicked heart. I may not have actually murdered somebody, but Jesus says, yeah, but did you hate? And I might not have committed adultery, but he said, well, but are you devaluing people by lusting after them? You see, so we all have murdered, and we all have committed adultery, and we all have hate, and we all lie. We've all been jealous. We all envy. We all have greed, right? All these things are in us. We know it. In your core, you know those. They're still there. The temptation is still there. That's what he's calling us to put down and to be holy. That's why the need to say, be holy. My mind was darkened so that it's futile. It thinks it's an upside down thing. It thinks that right is wrong and wrong is right. And it thinks up is down and down is up. It's twisted. My mind has been darkened. So this is our state. And we walk as zombies through this life. I'm in need of redemption there. This is my curse. And this is how the world lives its life. And its destiny is separation from God. Its destiny is that there would be a hell. Its destiny is that this sin would require a death. It was death and hell and separation from God awaits me. This is where I am. Some of us began to realize that because God made us alive, but God. This is where the redemption comes in. But God saw me as a slave. Picture this. I love the story of Hosea. But God sees me as a slave in shackles, imprisoned in all of this, grieved to the core. God had a plan. Now, the cost would be blood for blood. So that's why the scriptures, by his stripes you were healed, is demeaned when we make it look like it's about some sort of physical healing. It is a healing deeper than any physical healing you could imagine. By his stripes, I was healed of that curse. By his stripes, my sin was forgiven. By his stripes, my mind was opened. This is what happened. By his stripes, I was healed. I was redeemed. I was bought back. So God begins to buy me back in this. And that's what this is. And so when we get to this place and he says, listen, you've been redeemed, live like it. And that's the message that I got for you today. It's powerful, isn't it? Come on. We ought to live more holy because we can, because our heart has been replaced. That heart of stone was replaced with the heart of flesh. The word of God was written in my heart that I could live it out. My mind has now been freed from depravity so that I can understand the things of God because I have the mind of Christ. All of that should let us be so contrasting of the way the world lives that it's obvious that we've been purchased by the blood of the Lamb. And then so the question for us today is, do we look like it? Does my boss see that? Do my employers and my employees see that? Do my friends see that? Does my family see that? I'm going to live out the rest of my days in reverent fear as a foreigner in this land because this isn't my home anymore. This is where all the slaves live, and I've been redeemed from that. And while I'm still here, I'm now a stranger in this place. I'm a free man walking among slaves, and my home isn't here yet. I'm on a journey true north to get there. And so I'm going to live in reverent fear as a foreigner. I'm not going to try and become what this world is. I've been redeemed from that, and so have you. Lord bless you today. I can't wait to share some more with you tomorrow.